Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome to another episode of the Decentering Men series. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about how a lot of guys have bad coping mechanisms. So, I talked in previous episodes about how most men are not socialized to have emotional intelligence. They're not socialized to have a vocabulary to describe and express their feelings. And so, this actually leads to mental illness down the road for a lot of these men. This leads to a lack of ability to be able to connect with others because they don't even know how to connect with themselves. So, how can they connect with others? This also leads to men becoming emotionally unavailable fathers or emotionally unavailable husbands. By the way, some of the signs of a person being emotionally unavailable is that person is not able to spend quality time with you. They are not able to give you their undivided attention. When you're speaking, they don't really listen. They tend to zone out and have almost this zombie like vibe about them when you're talking. Another sign that a man is unavailable emotionally is they don't like making plans. So they don't like going out on dates with you. They don't like planning fun things to do with you, like activities and stuff. I remember I was in a relationship before where it's like, this guy didn't even want to go on a walk at the park. I mean, literally, these types of guys who are emotionally unavailable, they spend all of their spare time just scrolling their phone. So they tend to actually be very boring to be around because they don't engage in conversation with you a lot. They're just not very engaged overall. So you may find yourself doing all of the relationship work. It could seem like you never grow closer, and then sometimes they may even blow off their plans with you. So that is a very common problem that we see in men. But let's get back to the bad coping mechanisms. First of all, the top two coping mechanisms that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head for men are video games and porn. So a lot of men are actually addicted to video games. I'm talking about these are the guys who they will literally sit in front of the screen until their eyes hurt, like their back may hurt, their neck may hurt because they've just been sitting there in front of the controller. And a lot of times when men are addicted to video games, it's because that man has been conquered in real life. That man doesn't really have a sense of control or a sense of dominance over his own life and his own being. This is why I don't believe that men are natural born leaders, like how people try to say in the patriarchy, because it's like, if a man can't even lead himself, if a man can't even respect himself, and if he can't even control himself, if a guy can't even control something like his own eyes or his own dick, then how is he supposed to direct the course of not only his life, but his wife's life and the rest of his family's life? I mean, that doesn't even make sense. But a lot of guys who use bad coping mechanisms, video games are one of the main coping mechanisms because what video games do is they allow you to see yourself through the eyes of like a hero. They allow you to view yourself in a different way. You get to play this character. I don't know if you guys have seen those games like 2K where it's like, you get to design your own character. He'll be this buff guy or basically whatever that guy wishes that he actually was in real life. He will often design a video game character who will mimic these characteristics. So guys will make themselves taller in the video game. They will make themselves have like a whole different look. They'll make themselves have a nice lineup in the video game. I've even heard of guys spending their money on purchasing, video game clothing items for the characters in the video game, or purchasing some sort of new haircut or some sort of new power that this video game character can have, as opposed to using that money to build themselves up or using that money to create a better future for themselves. Nope, they're spending it on a video game outfit. That is an example of a bad coping mechanism. And a lot of times, these guys who are addicted to things like video games, it causes them to have a higher rate of anxiety and depression or a feeling of emptiness. A lot of these guys are very irritable, and guys do this as an escape mechanism. So once again, this is a negative coping mechanism. They are using video games as a form of escaping. I know that there are a lot of women right now who are married to guys who, once that guy gets home, he doesn't talk to his wife. He doesn't talk to the kids. He doesn't like tell his wife how beautiful she is or help clean up or anything. Nope. A lot of marriages are where the women are doing the housework, and then the man comes home, plays video games, watches porn, and then goes to sleep. I mean, that is really what a lot of these marriages are like. Pornography is another ineffective coping mechanism that a lot of men use because a lot of men view stress or having an orgasm as as a stress reliever. So in order for him to get that orgasm from his wife or girlfriend, he's going to have to put in actual effort, right? He may actually have to talk to you. He may actually have to pleasure you. But a lot of men like to take the easy way out. And so they will turn to sex workers. And when I say turn to sex workers, I mean strippers, OnlyFans girls, girls on Instagram. Maybe they'll hit their DMs. Maybe they will hit up a chat room, or they will play. I've even heard of, like, within video games, they have different groups and stuff, or different Discord groups that you can join where they have all of these different kinks and things like that. So the men who have bad coping mechanisms, this is actually one of the top ones that they will use. It is sex, and usually it's not with their wives or girlfriend. Usually it's, via pornography or via sex worker or something where the man is in complete control and only has to think about his own pleasure as opposed to thinking about the woman's pleasure. Some of the common symptoms that these men experience after they use bad coping mechanisms, such as porn addiction, are they will use it excessively. They will substitute pornography for real life sex. And have you ever noticed how a lot of men's standards for sex come from pornography? The majority of men's beauty standards and body standards are from Hollywood and pornography, because a lot of men are sheep. They just follow whatever they see in front of them. So it's not like most men are out here leading the charge or being innovative or creative or going against the grain. Most men are just sheep who just follow whatever the dominant men are promoting. And so a lot of these guys, they will follow what the men who are in charge of Hollywood or the men who create the porn, they will create their own standards for sex and for beauty based off of another man's creation, which would be pornography or movies and TV and stuff like that. But a lot of guys will rely on pornography to cope with difficult feelings or with stress. Let's say you get in an argument with your boyfriend or husband, and then he locks himself in the bathroom for an hour, or he locks himself in his room for an hour. Or sometimes men won't even lock the door, because I've actually heard of a lot of men who will, when they're at work on their lunch breaks, they will be, using porn so that they don't get caught at home. I've even heard of guys having totally different Instagram accounts or different accounts online and stuff, and like different usernames to go on Reddit or pretty much any social media website you can think of. There is porn on that website. So Instagram, Twitter or X, Facebook, all of these different groups can give a guy access to stuff like that. And so one of the symptoms of porn addiction is also where the guy, he will not have an easy time connecting with the woman that he's with, because in his mind, his mind is being shaped by whatever he's consuming. And I don't know why people try to act like pornography is not a form of media. All forms of media affect the way that you think. They affect your emotional state. All forms of media affect your brain and affect the way that you think. Pornography is just another form of media. So whether it's a video, whether it's a photo, whether it's, whatever it may be, a story you're listening to or an audio you're listening to, those are all forms of media. So I'm not going to let this slide as if it's not a big deal. Usually the ones who say it's not a big deal are actually the biggest addicts. But this is another bad coping mechanism that a lot of guys have. And another sign of porn addiction is guys will literally lose track of time while they're watching porn. So have you ever been around a certain guy or heard of a guy who, let's say he's watching it in the bathroom or something, you'll be confused, like, why is he in the bathroom for an hour? Oh my God, why is he in the bathroom for like an hour and a half? Or like, why is he in the bathroom for so long? It's because a lot of guys become so consumed in this form of escapism to the point where they will lose track of time. So most men, they are not self-actualized. Most men, they don't have all of these amazing passions and hobbies and companies they're building and doing all of these great things. And so instead of them losing track of time when it comes to actually fulfilling whatever they think their purpose is, a lot of guys who don't have a sense of purpose or they don't have a sense of direction or time management, they will waste their time on these bad coping mechanisms. By the way, no shade to sex workers at all. This channel is pro sex work, so this is not the sex workers' fault. I mean, there is a market for it, obviously, and that's why people are becoming rich off of it. So kudos to the women who have been getting their bags off of this. And then for those guys who try to say, oh, well, porn is not a big deal. If it's not a big deal, then why are you hiding it? Then why do you lie about it? Then why do you pretend like you watch less of it than what you really do? Then why won't you let your significant other see what kind of porn you're watching? What exact videos are you watching? What exactly are you doing? If it's not a big deal, right? And if it's nothing to be embarrassed about. See, this is how I know that people who make these talking points are just gaslighting, because if something truly wasn't a big deal and you truly weren't ashamed of it, you would have nothing to hide. You'd have no problem showing everything. You wouldn't have to clear your search history. You would have no problem showing whatever these videos are, all of them, not just the ones that you think are okay. You would have no problem showing these. But a lot of men, they're addicted to porn. Don't even get me started on the types of porn that are the most popular with men. I just looked up a stat, and it says, according to 2022, most viewed categories by gender for men are Japanese is number one, ebony, meaning black women of some sort, whether it's MLS or whatever. Mature is another one, MILF, lesbian, anal, threesome, transgender, amateur, outdoor, big tits, gangbang, babysitter, Asian, or reality. Wow, I'm going to definitely get demonetized. But a lot of guys, instead of actually dealing with their problems head on, instead of spending their money on therapy, a lot of guys literally spend more money on sex workers and porn than they do on fixing their mental health issues or paying off their credit card debt. Also, according to porn statistics, most of the women who are the porn actresses tend to be women who are around 115 pounds. They tend to be underage or very young, like still teenagers, so 18 or 19 years old. So let's say a guy is with you and you are not 115 pounds, you're not 18 or 19 years old. Obviously, that can pose a problem. And like I said, a lot of guys get their beauty standards from pornography and Hollywood. And so this is why guys will say, on a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 6. Well, why are they saying that? Because they're comparing you to celebrities and porn stars. That's why. So the less you look like an underage 115-pound girl in their eyes, the less desirable you are. Another bad coping mechanism that a lot of guys have is just straight up avoidance. This is why a lot of men actually complain that their wives nag them. Hey, can you take the trash out? Hey, did you pay that bill? Hey, did you ever schedule that doctor's appointment? Did you schedule the dentist appointment? A lot of guys, when they feel stressed or overwhelmed in life, instead of actually learning how to manage their time and learning how to manage their schedules, some guys who are lazy, they will simply avoid whatever needs to be done. They will avoid paying the bill and hope that it goes away. They will avoid the calls of the creditors and hope that somehow their credit doesn't matter 10 years down the line. They will avoid talking about the status of your relationship, or they will simply avoid making the next move with you, or, talking about how they feel, because this is an example of a coping mechanism that people use, and it's a negative coping mechanism. You just try to run away from the problem emotionally. And so this is another reason why you see a lot of women complaining and saying, hey, a lot of men are not emotionally available. Well, yeah, that's because a lot of guys, they can be very avoidant. And I think part of it is really because they simply don't even understand their own emotions. They don't even understand how they feel. So this is also why you see guys get into a relationship, then they'll still cheat, but then they'll stay in the relationship. And it's like, well, why are you doing that? Why can't you just make up your mind? Or they will have all of these confusing behaviors where to the female mind, it makes perfect sense to just dump the person you're with and just get a new relationship or whatever, or just be polyamorous or whatever, just be non-monogamous. But a lot of guys, first of all, they're not desirable, or they feel like they're not desirable enough to attain whatever relationship type they're seeking. But number two, a lot of guys are actually very afraid of being alone. And so they will try to project this fear onto women and say, we're going to die alone. But also, most men, have you ever noticed how most men actually don't leave relationships? They just cheat. Or most men, when they leave the relationship, usually it's because they have another woman on deck. That's why they're leaving. A lot of guys are not out here leaving relationships to simply be single with no options. No, absolutely not. That's like the worst thing for a lot of guys. And this is because having a girlfriend or having a woman in your life, usually for a guy, this fulfills not only his emotional needs, not just his sexual needs, but also his social needs. A lot of guys grossly underestimate how important it is to be able to socialize with another human being, just on a simple like platonic level. It doesn't even have to be in a sexual way. But a lot of people, when you socially isolate them, there are a lot of articles that talk about how being socially isolated, like having no one to talk to, having no one to have a conversation with, nobody cares about how your day went and stuff like that, that is actually terrible for your mental health. And so this is why you have a lot of guys out here who are very angry and enraged. A lot of people say like, "Oh, why do they have like red pill rage, or why are they so angry at women?" Well, a lot of guys, they are not getting their social needs met. Not forget the sexual or like the emotional and like feeling validated. No, a lot of guys, they don't even have any basic friendships because like I said, with the whole lack of emotional connection thing, if you don't know how to emotionally connect with the person, you're going to have a very difficult time making friendships. And then on top of that, if your only hobbies are video games and porn, you don't even really have any conversation topics that you can talk about to even make a friend. You don't go to the basketball court on Saturdays. You don't go out longboarding all the time. You haven't learned the newest tricks or whatever. You don't really know what's even going on in the world around you because you're so addicted to video games and porn. And so that makes a lot of guys genuinely uninteresting when it comes to making friends or whatever. And so a lot of guys, not only are they isolated from women or undesirable from women, but a lot of guys don't even have their basic social needs being met. And so this is why you will see guys who will stay in relationships with women that they literally hate. And a lot of guys will marry women that they literally hate because they are so filled with emotional voids to the point where even a woman that they hate is still doing a better job helping him to fulfill his own voids than he can. And so that's why you see this cycle of toxic relationships. But another bad coping mechanism that a lot of men have is the use of risky behavior. So eating junk food or, just doing these crazy things like over drinking or like doing all these hard drugs and stuff. There are a lot of articles that talk about how men have a lot more drug problems than women. And this is because most men, they have no one to vent to. You know why? Because a lot of men, they don't even know how to vent. And they haven't really built the emotional connections with anyone in their lives to the point where they even feel comfortable enough venting. And so this is why we see a lot of men trying to drown their problems at the bottom of a bottle of alcohol, or, you'll see them being addicted to marijuana or addicted to all types of illicit drugs. That's just another bad coping mechanism that you see a lot of guys using. And this is because when a person has an addiction like alcohol or gambling or something like that, this has a really powerful effect on the brain. So it causes you to have pleasurable feelings. A lot of men, they are very lacking in pleasurable feelings. This is why a lot of men themselves, sometimes you might be around them and be like, wow, why is this guy? He seems so angry. He seems so filled with rage. It's because some guys genuinely do not have pleasurable feelings. They don't really experience a lot of joy in their lives. They don't really experience a lot of happiness in their lives. They don't experience a lot of peace. And so when they go and gamble or they go drink a bunch of alcohol or they go smoke a bunch of weed or like do a bunch of different drugs and stuff like that, then it causes them to finally have those pleasurable feelings. And so that's why you see a lot of men getting addicted to things like this. So it's another bad coping mechanism. And if you're a woman who is tied to a man who, let's say he has a gambling addiction, and let's say you're a woman that has a lot of money, obviously this can pose a lot of problems. And that leads me to the next negative coping mechanism that I've witnessed a lot of men having, and that is violence and abuse. So attacking others physically, verbally, mentally, spiritually. These are the guys who maybe they're out at a bar or something. Not only are they addicted to alcohol and, getting too drunk, but these are the guys who also become violent when they get drunk. Or they're the guys who they try to punch downward. So if they see that you have any vulnerabilities, or if they like hate women or they view women as the weaker vessel, they often will try to bully women. But notice how most guys, they don't keep that same energy with men. Like I've had men try to bully me here on this YouTube channel. They'll try to bully my talking points. They'll try to speak against my talking points. But I don't ever see those men keeping that same energy with other men. I don't see those men trying to tag other men on YouTube or trying to like face these men who have dominated them in the past. And that's because usually a person who feels dominated by others, or a person who has spent their lives at the bottom of society, they feel like everyone's dominating them. That person will then go and turn around and try to dominate those that they view as below them. This is also one of the sinister reasons that I believe that a lot of people want children. I believe that not everyone who wants children is a good and genuine person. I genuinely do believe that some people want children specifically so they have another human being they can control. And I've noticed that with a lot of men, unfortunately, this has been the case. This is why we see men who, once they break up with the mother, or once they no longer have sexual or romantic access to the mother of his children, that man will then begin to distance himself from his own children that he has had with that woman, because those children, they are less likely to be able to be manipulated by that man, because the man doesn't live with them. The kids don't have as much of an emotional connection to him. And so that man, because he can't emotionally manipulate those children, he decides to distance himself, as opposed to just learning how to be a better father, learning how to communicate. No, all of that, that's too hard. That's too much work. So a lot of guys will literally distance themselves from their own children because they're not able to emotionally manipulate them. Not to mention the fact that a lot of people have children in hopes that those kids will grow up to take care of them. So you're literally birthing children, or you're creating all of these children in hopes that that child will be your slave later on. So that is another negative coping mechanism, kind of trying to use the labor of someone else, whether it's their emotional labor, their physical labor, kind of draining the life out of someone else, draining the energy out of someone else, and using their emotional connection to you in order to manipulate them into doing these things. I see a lot of fathers doing that with their children. I see a lot of fathers who will bully their sons or bully their daughters if the child doesn't do what they say, if the child doesn't go get them the remote, or if the child doesn't go pick up some stuff from the liquor store for them, or go pick up some cigarettes from the corner store, or go run all of these errands for dad. Then suddenly your parent will say something like, oh, you're putting yourself over your own father, or why are you putting these other men over your father? Like in the case where maybe the daughter, she goes out and starts dating a guy, or she gets married or something. I've noticed a lot of times fathers feel threatened when another man comes into the picture, and they will hide behind the whole "I'm protecting you" talking point. But a lot of times that man is actually jealous of another man's position in your life, because a lot of men know that their daughters are going to grow up and eventually get married or cater to another man besides himself. And so this is why we see a lot of guys who they will even devalue their own daughters. And some guys, they may favor their sons over their daughters, but then that doesn't work out either, because if you are not emotionally intelligent and you don't know how to emotionally connect, you won't be able to raise that son properly, because you don't know how to be encouraging. You don't know how to speak life into him. You don't know how to apologize for your wrongs. That leads me to another negative coping mechanism that we see in a lot of relationships. A lot of guys do not know how to apologize, or they simply refuse to apologize. They refuse to acknowledge their own wrongs. They refuse to take accountability for their wrongs. Or maybe you are with a guy who is a chronic apologizer. He will apologize up and down. He will admit his wrongs up and down, but he will never change. So instead of actually changing whatever he did wrong and never doing it again, he'll just say, "I'm sorry for cheating. I know that was wrong. I'm going to work on it." And then, of course, he never stops cheating. He just thinks that simply saying the apology will get him out of accountability, and that you'll forgive him and stay with him. Have you ever noticed how the pressure to forgive is usually placed on the woman? Usually women are expected to forgive, or that is seen as an option. Like, let's say you're a woman who's been cheated on. Oftentimes, if you go to a counselor or if you talk to friends and family, they'll be like, "Oh, well, I support you whether you choose to stay with him or leave him." But meanwhile, let's say it's a man and he's been cheated on by a woman. I notice that people don't have that same energy. That guy's friends will be like, "Oh, hell nah, you need to leave her." They will be kind of like one and done. But it's usually put on the woman to be the bigger person. Usually as women, we are expected to forgive. We're expected to be so nurturing. We're expected to be long suffering. I can't stand that word, because that is a very gaslighting phrase that a lot of Christian men or red-pilled men or misogynistic men will use against women to try to guilt that woman into staying with him. So a lot of men will say things like, well, you need to learn how to be long-suffering, or you need to learn how to forgive, or you're too sensitive, or you just need to be patient with me. Just give me more time, and then maybe I will be able to pay the light bill. Just give me a few more years. I'm still getting back on my feet. Oh man, if you don't want to be here with me while I'm down, then I'm not going to be there with you. And like, you're not really down for me like that. So they're trying to emotionally manipulate you. They want you to feel guilty as a woman, and they want you to stay with them out of guilt. But another bad coping mechanism that we see from a lot of men is minimizing things. So they will say things like, oh, it's not that bad. My credit's not that bad. Our financial background, our financial situation is not that bad. My cheating is not that bad. The way I talk to you is not that bad. And he will always compare himself to someone way worse than him to make himself look better. But that's really him just minimizing your suffering as a woman. So he'll be like, it's not that bad. Like, I'm still with you, aren't I? I'm still here, ain't I? I stayed with you after all these years. I still stayed with you when you were fat, didn't I? And they will try to use maybe one or two things that they did in the past that were good. They'll hang that shit over your head the rest of your life. Minimizing. That's another bad coping mechanism that we see. Another one, kind of a spin-off coping mechanism of minimizing, is straight up denial. Some guys will say, there is no problem. Porn isn't a problem. I can look at porn if I want to. You're just being jealous. I can look at other women if I want to. I can lust after other women if I want to. I can flirt with other women if I want to. I can text my ex if I want to. I can call my friend who's a girl if I want to. I can go to the cafe with another girl if I want to. There is no problem. So there's just a denial that happens. And I would say that that's just another form of kind of being avoidant. So a lot of guys, when they don't know how to cope with the fact that he is not who he thinks he is, or he is not who he says he is, because you know how a lot of guys, they'll try to say, oh, well, I'm a good, upstanding man, like I'm a great guy, I'm faithful, I'm loyal, I'm this, I'm that. A lot of guys talk a big game and have this unrealistic view of themselves. In my opinion, it could be potentially coming from the fact that a lot of men were socialized by video games, which is where you kind of imagine yourself as a character different from who you are, and then you control that character with a controller in your hand, and then you kind of determine the outcome of that character, and so you have a delusional view of yourself as being some sort of hero, some sort of zombie killer who saves the world or something. I actually believe that a lot of guys take this video game mindset and they carry it into their real everyday lives. This is why I'm honestly not a big fan of guys who are like super into gaming, because I do feel like, you know, it makes me start to question things like, if you are playing games 60 hours a week, I understand if you're playing games just as a hobby, but it's like, if it's getting to the point where literally it's like 60 hours a week, you come home at 5 p.m. and you're playing video games until 2 a.m. every day. You're not thinking about anything else, not building anything else, not working on yourself. Yeah, it's a problem. But another negative coping mechanism that we see from guys is lying, blaming others, being irresponsible, like always saying that it's someone else's fault as to why you are where you are. Have you ever seen how a lot of men, they will blame their failures on other men? They'll say, oh, you know, I'm a black man that didn't make it because the white man is keeping me down, or, you know, I never made it to becoming financially successful because my boss hates me, or because my teachers in school didn't like me, or because my baby mama, she's just trying to take my money, or I come from a bad background, I have a bad family that I came from. Slavery affected us for 400 years, and so that's why I am where I am today. So this constant blaming of others, or straight up lying, saying that you're doing well when you're really not, saying that you have a job that you really don't have, saying that you are wealthier than what you really are. A lot of men, well, honestly, our society in general does not thrive on honesty. So a lot of men don't know how to get what they want in life without lying. And so this is why I feel like a lot of men are actually socialized to lie in order to get what they want. If you watch a lot of these pickup artists and stuff, they will tell men here on YouTube, they'll say, oh, you know, just tell her she's the most beautiful woman you've ever seen. Tell her that you're going to have this future with her. Basically, they're teaching young men to lie to women in order to get what they want. But that's just another bad coping mechanism. You are trying to cover up the fact that you basically aren't shit by your own lies. And so that's something very common that we see. Another bad coping mechanism that I've seen a lot of men exhibit is low expectations. So you have a low expectation of yourself as a man and a low expectation of others, like, oh, bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks, or all women are gold diggers, or all men are trying to just constantly dominate other men, so I can't trust them either. It's that mindset of I can't trust nobody, but I want everybody to trust me. So it's very odd, extremely hypocritical. But I've seen lots of guys talking like that or thinking that way. They have a low expectation of themselves, and then this causes them to put a very low effort into their relationship with you because that man, he doesn't have a high view of you as a woman in the first place. And so he's not coming into the relationship expecting the best from you and expecting to give his best. He just has very low expectations. So he has this I don't give an F mentality. And this is just a coping mechanism to cover up the hurts that he's experienced throughout his life and to kind of shield you from the fact that he has been rejected. A lot of times, men who get rejected a lot by women, they tend to have lower expectations just of themselves and of the women around them because they feel like, well, nobody wants me anyway, or she's going to leave me anyway. They have this sort of mindset. And I don't get me wrong, I think that yes, there are people where they're going to leave you anyway, and I do think that you shouldn't go into a relationship expecting the world out of someone from day one. But at the same time, I think that there's a better way to deal with that. You don't have to lash out. I've noticed that a lot of guys, the way that they react to this is by lashing out at women, calling women bitches randomly, getting mad at women and trying to humble women randomly and say, well, you're a six or you're this or you're that, when that woman didn't ask for your opinion on how she looks. Like, I don't go up to guys or talk about guys online and say, well, he's a six or he's this and that. Especially if that guy hasn't really wronged anyone or done anything bad. It's like, I don't really see the point in doing that. I don't feel the need to try to humble a random guy. But I've noticed a lot of guys, they have done this to women because I've even seen this in the workplace too, where some men they will start humbling women because that man has a low view of himself. And so if he is around a woman who has a high view of herself, he wants to bring her view of herself down. He doesn't want that woman thinking she's a 10. He doesn't want you to think you're a 10 because that means that you're going to think you're better than him because he has a low view of himself. He views himself as a 3. So if he views himself as a 3 and you view yourself as a 10, you're triggering his inferiority complex. Another bad coping mechanism that I've seen a lot of men do is eating junk food, eating unhealthy, having all of these unhealthy habits. It's very rare that you see a guy who eats vegetables consistently, just being honest. And I've noticed that a lot of guys, when they're stressed or like when bad things are happening in their lives, instead of taking a look at themselves and trying to fix the problem, a lot of guys will resort to general overall laziness. So they'll just start eating a bunch of Cheetos and a bunch of stuff from the gas station or, not really like thinking about what they're putting into their bodies, not really thinking about improving their health in any way. And this goes for mental health as well. I've noticed a lot of guys neglect both their physical health and their mental health. The average guy is not walking around with a six pack. The average guy is not walking around eating healthy meals 2 out of 3 times a day. No, the average guy is eating lots of processed food. He's eating all this bad stuff. And then a lot of those same guys have the audacity to then feel the need to comment on women's bodies and tell women like, oh, well, your body's not that good, or like you have no butt or whatever, you look bad. Meanwhile, that guy is sitting around eating a box of Twinkies, commenting on YouTube channels. And it's really just sad. But what do you ladies think? Have you ever been around a guy with any of these bad coping mechanisms? Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.